It is too often that I have to say, I'm so sorry I cannot be with you on this day. Again, I'm saying the same thing that I've said so many times before to different gatherings all over the world. I'm so sorry I cannot be here with you today. But of course, my thoughts are with you, my spirit is with you, and I perfectly agree with you that we must speak up and speak out for freedom and human rights. We have been doing that in Burma for over 20 years, and people are now beginning to see that these 20 years have not been in vain. It is important that people speak up and speak out. When I went on a tour of the country back in 2002 to 2003, people asked me what they could do. I knew then that our people had been badly intimidated by the military regime, and so I would say to them, you must start by refusing to say something is good if it is not good, or saying something is just if it is not just. You start that way, then gradually go on to say that this is unjust, this is bad, and then you go on to follow up your words with appropriate action. So speaking up and speaking out is an important step in our fight for freedom and human rights. People have to have the courage to stand up and say, this we will not tolerate, this we will not accept, this is not what is right for humanity. By finding the strength to speak up, we strengthen others. I believe that the National League for Democracy has helped to keep alight hope in the hearts of the people of Burma by speaking out for freedom and for human rights. I wish very much that we could pool all these voices speaking up for human rights and freedom and make the sound of freedom and rights. I would like all the voices speaking up for freedom and rights to be combined so that nobody anywhere in the world can be deaf to the sound of that call. I hope that our voices here in Burma can be added to yours, and together we will be able to take our world one step forward in the fight for freedom and rights.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our final panel, World Peace and Nonviolence, Never Give Up, moderated by author and journalist Jim Wooten.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Dancing with the Peacemakers. My name is Jim Wooten. I point that out because I've been often mistaken this week for Sean Penn, and I hate it when that happens. This is an auspicious occasion this entire week, and I can't tell you how pleased and honored and fortunate I am to be here and to be the only person on this stage who has not won a Nobel Peace Prize. And I say I'm fortunate because I don't have to put up with always being described as an eminently decent person, as a courageous humanitarian, and as someone who has helped to make great changes in the world. No one has ever described me as that. These people have to live with those descriptions every day of their lives, and will no doubt have to endure them for the remainder of their lives, because, in fact, that is what they are. Eminently decent human beings and courageous humanitarians and people who have made the world a better place, or at least given the world a chance to be a better place. Now, to our theme and topic this afternoon, which is nonviolence, never give up. The construction of that, the very language of that, seems to suggest that nonviolence as a tool or a technique for social or political or economic change is sufficiently difficult to consider throwing in the towel, to at least consider that this is too hard, much too hard. And perhaps finally, to reach the conclusion, as many in our world have already done, that nonviolence simply does not work. Is that your view, Professor Williams?
Please call me Jody, okay? Right. I get confused with the professor
thing.
Okay,
and you can call me Sean.
Well, Sean, I've been pondering a lot over the last few years the wimpification of peace. And it makes me really angry in a peaceful sort of way to think about that. I believe that we really have to strive for demilitarization, which we should stop thinking is a dirty word. We need to recognize that nonviolence is not inaction. Nonviolent action, I believe, is among the most courageous acts that a person can possibly contemplate, stand up, and carry out. I believe that constructing sustainable peace with justice and equality and an end to impunity is not for wimps or the weak of heart. Whenever I talk about it, I give the examples of Sister Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. Through her courageous stance on democracy through nonviolence, look at what is being accomplished in our country. If that's wimpy nonviolence, that's the kind of wimp I want to be. I think about Martin Luther King Jr. and what he did to help bring about equality in this country, which we are still struggling for, by the way, as we all know, but it has to be said. If leading people in the streets and being attacked by dogs and jailed for your beliefs is being a wimp, I want to be a Martin Luther King Jr. wimp. I can't be a Dalai Lama wimp because he's a monk and I'm a girl. But I want to end, right? I want to end this comment just pointing out that the flip side to me of really pushing forward with nonviolent action to change this world is really demilitarization and thinking of it as a positive thing. When Sean, not you Sean, the real Sean, when the real Sean mentioned how lobbyists can tie up the common good, I can only think of the military-industrial complex, and that is not a tree-hugging, wimpy liberal phrase. It came from Dwight David Eisenhower in 1954. He is the one who coined the phrase of the military-industrial complex and told us to beware. The defense industry was brilliant in its conception in putting parts of the process of building weapons in almost every congressional district in the United States of America, making it extremely difficult to take that industry on, because you got every congressman, every senator who's going to be fighting under the guise of, defense. And I really wish we would rename it the War Department, because it is what it is. And jobs. Jobs. I wish that we all wanted to live in a country that provided dignified work that did not include building weapons to attack other countries. It's making me MAD. So I'm going to think about how I'm going to, there are a lot of organizations out there that want to make demilitarization a realistic companion to nonviolence. And I challenge the young people to think about that one. Because you have to get rid of weapons. You have to really challenge the belief that having a lot of weapons makes you safe, in order to really bring sustainable peace to this planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody clearly is a girl, but she tells me she is not the mother of Ted Williams or Robin Williams. I recall a story that John Williams, my old friend, John Lewis, once told me. John Lewis, as you know, marched for much of his life with Martin King, and was beaten badly at the Selma Bridge. And I said to him, after that, John, and became a congressman from Atlanta, distinguished. I asked him, after that, John, after they opened up a big slice of your head, why did you continue to subscribe to Dr. King's concept of nonviolence? And John Lewis said, because Dr. King would have found a gun and shot me if I hadn't. President Gorbachev, can you tell me, or tell us, there seem to be other people in this room, when you first heard of the concept or the words nonviolence, and whether in your place and in your time it ever made any difference in your life and career?
For me, this was, in fact, the real choice. The real choice is, what do I do to change the world for the better without using force, without using weapons? In our history, changes always happened as a result of violence. I believed, and I will be speaking more about politics because I have spent 60 years in politics, and it is in politics where I got the feel of those problems, where I understood those problems. When I became the head of the Soviet government, of the Soviet Union, then the question was, we need to address our problems. We need to solve our problems. And when I and my supporters started to discuss these changes, we fully understood that it will not be simple, it will not be easy, it will not be calm. This would mean conflict, and that there will be a struggle. It will have to be a struggle. And if things become really severe, will we then So if things become quite difficult, quite severe, will we then And people will say, where is the government? Why does the government put our house in order? And when they say put our house in order, they mean the use of force, mean the use of violence. I believe that today in the world there is a movement in support of democracy. It's a very important movement. This is probably the most pivotal movement that could result in really great changes. People want to be able to solve their problems in their countries, in their regions, in the world. The people, rather than someone behind their backs, rather than some super intellect that will do it for them. It's for the people to do it, to decide, to speak out, and ultimately it's for the people to decide. This is the most important thing, and I think all the governments now feel that they are being challenged in this way. The recent election campaign in my country, in Russia, was open. That's the result of glasnost. It was a very contentious campaign, and things became very heated, and some people kind of felt fire under their feet. And nevertheless, people spoke out, people protested until the end. This was not yet decisive, but this has already been a big influence on the course of affairs in our country. People have influenced, people have had an impact, and now the president and the prime minister of our country are repeating some of the demands that we heard during those street protests. So one can achieve big results without the use of force, without violence, and certainly without killing fellow human beings. And my credo, my way of politics has always been without blood, without violence. There was some violence, but I still am sticking to this position.
Your Holiness, would you tell us, please, about your expectation that the movement for independence from China in your homeland of Tibet, which has been, with some exceptions, nonviolent, largely due to your own influence and leadership from exile. Could you tell us if you expect that, forgive me, when you're gone, that nonviolence will continue?
As far as Tibet is concerned, Tibetan problem is concerned, of course, 1949 and 1950, the new situation developed. Soon after the establishment of People's Republic of China, led by Chinese Communist Party. Then, 51, already Chinese communist military forces occupied a city, now today so-called autonomous region, but actually they, I think, last at least, I think, around 400 years under Tibetan government jurisdiction. So that actually, according to some expert international law, they consider de facto independent, sort of say, state. So the Chinese government at that time, the leaders like Chairman Mao Zedong and some other, they quite realistic. So they accept the reality. So even though the east part of Tibet autonomous region, the Tibet under Tibetan government jurisdiction, already occupied, but instead of sending army to the rest of the area, they prefer peaceful liberation through negotiation. So finally, a 70-point agreement signed. So at that time, the Chinese government carried actually spirit of one country, two systems. So I think the essence of middle way approach already there. But then somehow it failed to carry practically about that spirit. So then 1959, things become very difficult. So we escaped. Then some years, all our energy and time mainly spent on rehabilitation and education, refugee community. Then 74, while China, full swing cultural revolution. And India, we made up our mind. Sooner or later, we have to talk with the Chinese central government. So the question of independence is not sort of unrealistic. Therefore, we already made up our mind the concept of meaningful autonomy. That is the meaning of middle way. Not complete independence or separation from people of China. At the same time, not presence of autonomy status. All Tibetan area, autonomy region, autonomy district, autonomy county, autonomy prefecture, like that. So actually Chinese constitution recognizes these areas, a Tibetan area. So we also thinking all these Tibetan area, since already the constitution recognized these are Tibetan ethnic groups. So constitution arranged different level of autonomy district, autonomy county, like that. So they should have sort of same sort of rights regarding preservation of their culture, particularly their language, their script. So then, 79 or late 1978, some indication come from Peking. Then we are already ready to talk with Chinese, not seeking independence, but seeking mutually equitable solution. So then, from 79, we carry that, so to say, policy, that approach. Sometimes really hopeful, sometimes difficult, but then recently things become very, very difficult, but our stand, no change. So now there's some positive result out of this approach. Inside Tibet, no. Things getting worse and worse. No. But then, and then recently, there several meetings with Chinese officials, no result. Almost like our representative visit Peking or some other places. Looks simply receiving scold, criticism, that's all. Sometimes I describe the totalitarian regimes, no ear, only mouth. Lecture on us. Never willing to listen others' view, others' feeling. As soon as there are sort of feelings, or different views come out, then suppress, then give one a good name. Actually, 1980, I think 87, some crisis happened. Then Jonathan Muskie, I think correspondent, observer. I know him. So he came to see me in Dharamsala, and he asked me, why is the Chinese government very much sort of dislike you? Why? He asked me. Then I told him, oh, I'm not acting like yes minister. They want, I should say, whatever they say, oh, yes, of course, yes, yes. They want that kind of response or attitude.
The other night, President Kennedy, I'm sorry, Holiness. Go ahead.
So now my main point now, I think many of you may not know this background. Sometimes people have the impression that some crisis now, very recently, happened. Not that. Many Chinese also feel like that. When I met some Chinese, they are little sort of frustration or little sort of hostile. Then I told these long sort of stories, 60 years sort of story. And then they understand, oh, Tibetan issue is really very, very complicated issue. So in any way, so now main point is, our approach bring some concrete result or positive result from government level. But Chinese public, I mean Chinese intellectuals or educated Chinese, and also many Chinese, including students who are studying in a foreign country, they have the opportunity to know the reality. So, majority of them fully support about our middle wave approach. So, our way of approach, firstly, very strictly non-violent way. Secondly, middle way. So that really, I feel, brought a lot of support from Chinese people or Chinese public side. So that, I think, positive result, significant result. After all, our problem have to solve between Tibetan and Chinese. So support from Chinese public is very essential. Like Li Shobo, say, I think some occasion he expressed concern about Tibet, and then many other Chinese. So actually, I just want to express in our previous meeting, when Bishop Tutu there, we often usually express, it is sad, Aung San Suu Kyi not in our sort of group. Now Aung San Suu Kyi already released. The situation in Burma now really now improving. Now here, Liu Xiaobo, another Nobel laureate, not certain sort of professional field, but for democracy, liberty, freedom, like that. So, of course, still impossible to say come. But I think we must show our solidarity and our sort of desire waiting him, and sometime in future, sort of today, as our gathering, like that. So, according my own experience, and also what really happened in South Africa changed. Mainly through non-violent way, under the leadership of Nelson Mandela and Bishop Tutu. So at least after independence, the country comparatively peaceful. I always telling people when I give talk, 20th century become like century of violence. According to some historian, over 200 millions of people killed through violence. If that such amount, immense violence, really brought world better shape, then such sort of immense violence have some justification. But that's not the case. Even beginning of this 21st century, some sort of unhappy things, these are symptoms of previous centuries' negligence or mistake. So therefore, we have to work long-term plan. That is through education, through awareness. From childhood, we must cultivate, believe, any conflict must solve through understanding, through talk, through dialogue, not use force. Even family level quarrel should develop that kind of attitude. Then community level, then national level or international level. So the peaceful world does not mean no longer any problem. Problem remain. So long our human brain remain, that's the source of problem. Isn't it?
Thank you, Your Holiness.
So we need spirit. You see, whenever we face disagreement or conflict, from our mind automatically must sort of develop feeling, how to solve this problem through dialogue. So I'm expressing this 21st century should be century of dialogue. So this through education, not through few speeches or few paper. No, from kindergarten up to university level, should teach whenever we face problem. We should not act like animal. We should act like human being. Use human intelligence, holistic view. Then only way is dialogue. Any solution through dialogue, that solution is genuine solution. Or some kind of a solution through use force, unpredictable. It may create more problems. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Holiness. I remember being in an airport lounge many, many years ago in Geneva, I believe it was, and seeing the Dalai Lama over in a corner with many of his people and friends gathered around him with gales of laughter erupting from that corner. And since I wasn't accustomed to being around holiness in any form, I kept my distance. But I was reminded at that moment of what Lincoln told the critics of Ulysses Grant, who said he was drinking too much. And Lincoln said, find out what brand he likes and send the case to all of my generals. I wanted to know what you guys were drinking over there. Professor Yunus, you are celebrated and have been honored principally for establishing a bank that made available millions of dollars, microloans, they've come to be called, to people in your country, poor people in your country who were otherwise deemed not worthy of credit. that's clearly nonviolent, and that's clearly a tool of social and economic change in your country, particularly because most of the people the money has been lent to are women, as I understand it. Are there similar nonviolent means of economic change?
I'll be right back.
Okay. Спасибо.
Я иду к ведущему, чтобы сказать один момент.
All right.
I'll be right back. Just a minute.
With my fluent Russian, I believe he just said, "I'll be right back." Or maybe I'll be back. Now, back to Professor Yunus.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is clearly a nonviolent idea, very successful. Are there other similar nonviolent means of economic change that you're aware of in existence now or on the drawing boards?
Well, let me put it this way, and the way you phrase the question. If you look at the poor people, they are very nonviolent. Because if you see millions and billions of poor people, they have not gone in the road of violence. The whole thing will erupt if they did that. So they're very quiet, they're waiting. They don't even know that there's something can happen to them. They have accepted the way it is. At the same time, if you look at the unemployed people all over the world, they are very nonviolent. Again, millions and billions of people remain unemployed. Why does it happen to them? Is it the fault in those people? Can they, if they realize that it's not my fault that I'm a poor person, if they realize that it is not my fault that I am unemployed, probably they will say, why do I have to suffer every day, every year, my whole generation, the next generation, and so on? So there's a very easy road to violence into that. Luckily, they don't go for violence. They are very quiet people.
And they don't have any guns.
Luckily, they don't have guns. But if you want to get the guns, they can find it. There's no problem. There are people who would give them the guns readily to create their violence. So it's keeping people in that kind of situation is not very safe anyway for anybody. But somehow, whatever we do it a small local kind of problem. It's not a global problem. But what I'm saying, potentially is very explosive. Could have been very explosive. Once they realize that this is not their fault that they're poor, it's not their fault that they're unemployed. One way I usually explain poverty, coming from my own work over the years, that it's almost like a bonsai tree. You take the best seed of the tallest tree and put it in a flower pot and then wait to grow, and it grows after long patient wait, it grows only this big. And we call it bonsai. It looks exactly like the beautiful tree out there, but it's only this big. And you question, what's wrong with this tree? Why didn't it grow? We can't blame the seed because we picked a good seed. Ultimate explanation is we put it in a flower pot. We didn't put it in the real soil to grow as tall as the other trees. I said, poor people are bonsai people. There's nothing wrong with their seed. Simply, society never gave them the space to grow. That's what makes all the difference. If they understood that, now they blame their fate, they blame God, they blame everybody else. They don't say the system which made me this. That's why they're quiet. But if they realize it's not my fault, poverty is imposed on me. I have not created poverty. I'm as good as anybody else because my seed is as good as anybody else. So why am I suffering from this? Why institutions are screwed up? Why institutions are built in the system where I'm rejected? That's where this microfinance thing came about. When I tried to lend a few dollars worth of money to a few people in the village and tried to attract the bank to do it, bank said, no, it can't be done. They are not creditworthy. Then I said, what is creditworthy? Have you ever tried? He said, no, we don't have to try because they're not creditworthy. How do you know? Because everybody knows. I said, that's not good enough. You have to try and find out. And I tried and I found out it's not true. Today, I keep asking the question, I said, should the banks tell that poor are not creditworthy? They make judgment on people? Rather, people say that the banks are not people-worthy. Isn't that the way it should have been? So, we have banks all over the world. We have seen what happens with the banks. You saw the financial crisis coming to them and make other people suffer. When people lost their jobs, it was not he was inefficient or she didn't do the job. Somebody screwed up the system somewhere and I lost my job. And we are lucky. We are lucky that they are peaceful. We are lucky that they are not marching up and down the street, that you made us suffer. You have no right to do that. Why did you design a system where and we are so proud of the system that we build, capitalist system or whatever system we say, we are so proud of it. Why did we create a system where half the population remain unemployed? What's wrong with them? They're capable people, creative people, innovative people, ready to contribute, ready to do, but they are wasted away. What a waste of human resources, human creative power, and we are so proud of the system. Why can't we? Why can't we throw that system in the basket? This is not going for anybody any good.
Professor, I have an idea that there may actually be some bankers in this audience.
I'll love to talk to them.
Right. I wondered if you might want to.
Yeah, we run banks now in New York City, so it's not far in Bangladesh. You don't have to go all the way. We have 4 branches in New York City. We have 9,000 borrowers. We started in 2008. And all 9,000 are women, very low-income women. Average loan is $1,500. Repayment is 99.3%. No collateral, nothing. Right. The same city you can get for a small loan, not to the bank. Bank, absolutely, no way. You can go to only the payday lenders. And you know what payday lenders do. Charge 100%, 500%, 1,000% interest, and it's a thriving business. Nobody cares, and we say, competition will take care of everything. What happened to the competition for thousands of years? It still continues, the same old loan sharking. Right. So that's where we created the new institutions to show that it works. And we were there in 2008 in New York City. And when the financial crisis came in New York City, when the big banks were melting away, collapsing, on the other side of the street, Grameen program was thriving. And I said, I wish some journalist will ask me, tell me who is creditworthy. I will tell them who creditworthy are. They were telling me 35 years back that poor are not creditworthy. Today is a good example on the same street, is the poor who are paying the money back. All the rich people, they are not making their payments. With all the lawyers, all the collateral, they said, without collateral, you cannot do banking. I said, what are you doing now with collateral? This is what's happening without collateral, without paper, without any lawyers in our system. We don't have any lawyers, but it works. The point I'm making, we don't have a system which is people-friendly. Mm-hmm. We need to redesign the system. The system we have is a money-centric system. Mm-hmm. Money, money, money. Money is the king. It becomes a habit. It becomes an obsession. It becomes an addiction. Mm-hmm. and as if human beings are some kind of money-making robots. And I keep telling that human beings are not money-making robots. They are human beings. They are wide multidimensional capabilities. But you put them into a tiny little format called money makers. So we said, redesign the system which accommodates the full human being, not robot-like human being. You created robots out of the system. So we are creating a different kind of business called social business. Non-dividend company, which solves problems. We can create a system which is a problem-solving system, which is cause-driven system, not just money-centric system. So we said we can create two kinds of business. One, to make money. One, to solve problems. Today, money-making is a means. Money-making is an end. It doesn't make any sense. Money-making can be a means, but end has to be a purpose. What is the purpose of life? That's lost completely. So you talk about violence, non-violence, and so all that. Seeds of violence is in the system. Until you pick up those seeds out of the system, very difficult to handle that. So you go into wars, you go into things, justifying that this is the way economy can grow, this is the way your interest, immediate commercial interest lies, or whatever. You want to hold on to the oil fields, you want to hold on to this particular thing. That's what the seeds of all the problem.
Sean, can I
Thank
say
you.
one sentence?
Sure.
In that context, I just feel an obligation to do a shout out to Occupy across the country. These are people who have stood up to express their objection to institutionalized inequities of wealth, poverty, and instead of being listened to in dialogue, as His Holiness has talked about, they have been vilified, criminalized, beaten, tear-gassed, and I've been very appreciative of the moderators in these sessions at how many times they spoke about Occupy as if it was something worthy to be listened to. And I will just end saying that several of us Peace Laureates are meeting with Occupy Chicago after this session. Thank you.
Welcome back, President Gorbachev.
Это очень интересная и важная тема.
This is a very interesting and important theme. This is something that we are all very concerned about. So when people talk about change in certain specifics, certain details, that does not really change the situation. We often see that in Russia. The so-called Washington consensus, the radical approach to the economics, the neoliberal approach to economics, that has resulted in the financial world being kind of overwhelming and totally separate from the real economy. I have watched the debt growing in the United States. I have watched also how the payment of this debt, and I am amazed. I also see that what happened in America then extends elsewhere, and the banking system imposes certain things on the society. And we see today, and that is amazing, that in Latin America, many countries have rejected this, and they no longer want even to be involved with the International Monetary Fund. They don't want that kind of debt that burdens them, that is like a chain that curbs the development of their economies. They have paid out those debts. It was very difficult. They paid out those debts and no longer take out any more loans, even though they need money for development. So I think that means that the system is wrong. It's not just the details. We need to change the system that is based entirely on a quest for profits, the system that is based entirely on consumerism, the system that wants more. That is not the way to go. That is really not the way to go. So, and even as we speak, we see the problems, the crushing problems of millions, hundreds of millions and billions of people. We see that people lack fresh water, safe drinking water. There is I know that as the founding president of Green Cross International, I know that in the world today, more than 1 billion people do not have access to safe drinking water. So what about the money that, those hedge funds and corporations amass, and at the same time, these problems that concern the human beings are not addressed. And what is happening to the environment, to our nature? This is a tragedy. 60% of the ecological system today have been damaged, seriously damaged. We see the damage to the air, to the airspace. We see the damage, the pollution of rivers and oceans, and that is so to say, the cradle of our civilization. That is what has shaped and developed our human civilization. And while nothing is done about this, we see the blowing of bubbles, and ultimately those bubbles are punctured, and the result is that people suffered. So we need to change this system. We need to say so. We need to start saying that our planet today is overpopulated, but every human being, we need to address the problems of the human beings and the problems of nature. And it all comes down to, we used to think that once, the Cold War is over and we live in a global world, these problems will be solved. Once we do not no longer have confrontation, we have the opportunity to finally address the big problems of mankind. But instead, the financial corporations are using this global world exclusively in order to amass wealth, more and more wealth. They want to use these opportunities for their benefit. The end of the Cold War, to use it for their benefit. We thought that it will help to address the problems of the human being, like poverty, like protecting nature, and all the other problems. So we need a different kind of governance. The problems of governance today can no longer be postponed. We need to build a truly new world order. Pope John Paul II formulated it very well. It's something that is his legacy to all of us. We need a truly new world order, a truly new world, more just, more stable, and more humane. And that's it.
May I just add one more?
Yes, briefly.
Thank you.
We want to get to some students' questions.
Yes, of course. Today is the 21st century with all the technologies that we have, and this technology is expanding so fast. Every day the speed of expansion is getting faster. But with all the creativity that we have at our disposal and all the technology that we have at our disposal, if you put them together in one place and then assemble all the problems of the world in another place, let them fight with each other. The creative power of human beings and the technology and the problems. Who will be the winner in that fight? And anybody can answer that question right away. The human creativity will win over all the problems we have. But why can't we do that? because we don't have connection. Because all the creativity, all the technology is in the command of the business. And what do they use this technology for? Make more money. These are not directed to solving problems. So we need to create a system where this technology is available to solve the problem. What kind of technology is that? For example, it's just one idea. The patent rights. We give patent rights, we create patent rights and so on. And over years, you have so many patents, you use one, discard other one, and your drawers are filled with patent rights. Nobody can touch it because you own it. Because here is the human intellect bundled into that. And it could have solved many problems for other people, but we are so stingy, we are so selfish, we won't let anybody touch that. So what is the justification? Why can't we bring them out? If it is useful for people, for God's sake, use it.
Right on.
You can't do that. So I'm trying to explain to the businesses, I said, if you have some discarded patents which you never use now, you'll never use in future, would you let me use this? I'll create a social business of patent management. I'll manage your patent. We will take your permission to use it for the benefit of people. If you agree, I'll use it. If they will only release that, then lots of things can be happening in a completely different way. So this is the one. And I'm depending on the young people. I have tremendous confidence in the young people because their attitudes and their upbringing is completely different than our previous generation. They see the world in a completely different way because they have the technology, they have access to information, access to knowledge, access to other people. It's so enormous at their disposal. Hoping that they will start creating the design of a new system where they will put kind of in front of them the objective of that system. There should be no person who will be unemployed in that system. The word unemployment will be unknown in that system. Why should anybody be unemployed? That's the question. And there will be no poverty, because if there is no unemployment, there will be no poverty at all. Why should there be any poverty? And we should be creating museums for poverty museums, so that in that age, children and the grandchildren can go and see what poverty used to be like. Go to the poverty museum.
Thank you, Professor. I think we're only going to have time for one question. Your Holiness, do you feel up to answering a really difficult question from one of the students here? It's from Allison Walsh, who's at Prospect High School. Where are you, Allison? You around? Okay. Maybe Allison does not exist, and this is an effort to sabotage this entire event.
Proceedings.
Okay, hi, Allison. All right, Your Holiness, there are several questions of this vein in this stack here. But how would you suggest it is possible to reason your message and the message of this event of peace with unreasonable people, people who refuse to see another point of view? How would you go about that?
I'm Buddhist. Buddha always respect the different views of different people. So if someone insists his or her own view, then no argument. Chaos. Chaos. I really sort of impressed your other sort of presentation. It is true. I think many problems ultimately related with extreme self-centered attitude. We are lacking this sense of concern of others' well-being. I think mistake, I feel, those self-centered person
And to those self-centered persons, if we tell, oh, altruistic attitude is something marvelous, good, then they say, oh, I can't. But then that's due to lack of awareness. The best way to take care of yourself, best way to protect your own interest is showing genuine sense of concern of others. Because we human beings, social animal, each individual's future depends on the rest of the community. Even billionaire, their future depends on the rest of the community. And even billionaire or even dictator need friendship, smile. So how can bring smile, genuine friendship? Genuine friendship comes on the basis of trust, respect. How can develop trust? If you extend genuine sort of warm feeling, sense of concern of their sincerely, then trust comes. On the trust, you can develop genuine friendship. A community or family full of trust, full of friendship, much happier. Money cannot bring human sort of, affection. So therefore, we need more sort of awareness, more effort, make awareness or understanding about the value of warm-heartedness. I usually call, we are selfish by nature. Take care of oneself. Of course, ultimately, individual. I don't know. If I tell you Tibetan, then you may look like that. I know only one Russian, Das Vidanya, that I know. Oh, Ujin Harasho. 2 words.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Holiness. President Gorbachev, you wanted to say... Right. Dobrai and no povrai. I trust you'll be finished in 50 seconds, and we can verify.
Хорошо, мне хватит. Знаете, я вспомнил, мне понравилось...
Well, I recalled something that while listening to you, and I believe that this may be the message from this discussion. We need dialogue. We are different by nature. We are also different because of the historical background. We are different in all kinds of ways. But in this global world, we need to find a way toward a better life. What is that way? Only dialogue. I remember my second talk with President Reagan. We started that discussion during my visit to Washington. President Reagan started to lecture me. He was 20 years older than I was, and he would seem to have a right to lecture. But nevertheless, I had to stop him, and I had to say to him, Mr. President, the two of us represent two great nations. We bear enormous responsibility to our nations and the world. And I said, I feel that together we could go very far together and accomplish a great deal. And I remember at our very first meeting, that was not my impression. When people asked me what my impression of Reagan was after that first meeting, I said, he's a real dinosaur. And then it turned out that he, too, was asked about what was his first impression of Gorbachev. And he said, Gorbachev is a die-hard Bolshevik. And so that dinosaur and that die-hard Bolshevik, those inveterate opponents, politicians, they met and they launched a dialogue. And 2 days later, we made a statement, a joint statement. which seemed initially hopeless to make a joint statement, but we stated a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. And that said a lot. That was the main thing that people heard from our meeting. And if there can be no nuclear war, then what is the sense of any arms race, particularly of a nuclear arms race? So a dinosaur and a diehard Bolshevik engaged in dialogue, and they made conclusions that reflected the truth. And so what we need is dialogue.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you for your lives, for your work, and for your continued efforts to save us from our evil selves, as it were. Professor Yunus, before we leave, if you'll keep your seats, Professor Yunus will go to the lectern. And as you recall, his daughter, whom we heard singing on Monday night, has a much better singing voice than Professor Yunus, and in addition is much better looking. But I met her mother today, and now I understand why. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I have the great honor and privilege to read out the statement made by the Nobel laureates appealing to the youth of the world, young people of the world. As I was explaining myself, having tremendous confidence in the ability and the creativity of the young people to create the system, create the world that we are always talking about in the near future. So here's the statement on behalf of all the Nobel laureates present in this conference, in this summit. As Nobel Peace Laureates and laureate organizations, we realize that if the commitment to peace and human rights is not passed on from one generation to the next, our achievements will be short-lived. For this reason, we applaud the youth of the world who are standing up and speaking out in protest against injustice and inequality, and defending the right to peace, social justice, and a sustainable future. We are concerned that all threats to peace are persisting and new ones are emerging. We therefore urge young people to organize for peace and learn to prevent and resolve conflicts peacefully. At a time when militarism continues to corrupt the minds of the politicians and poison the international relations, when a new arms race is unfolding, this must be a key priority. As Nobel laureate Martin Luther King Jr. said, I quote, "Those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war," unquote. Great words. Great words indeed. Our collective security can no longer focus primarily on the security of states. It must focus on the security of people. Wars and militarism cannot achieve real human security. Substantial reductions of world military expenditures could eliminate the crushing poverty, whereby nearly 1/3 of humanity lives in insufferable conditions. Excessive military expenditures not only represent a theft from those who are hungry, but also an ineffective means of obtaining security. Equally unacceptable is the violence against nature that ruins the environment upon which civilization depends. All the world's religions and peoples share similar basic values: such as peace, compassion, love, justice, service towards others, and the alleviation of suffering. Political leaders must recognize our common humanity through deeds rather than mere words. We urge young people to question their leaders about what they are doing and to address the main challenges that face the world today. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen for a special video presentation.
I want to welcome everybody to the city of Chicago, and on behalf of the residents, I want to thank all the Nobel laureates who traveled many miles to come here.
I'm part of a peace class, and during that peace class we got invited as a school, and she asked the class if we wanted to go home, and we all were like, of course, this is the chance of a lifetime.
So we are having the chance to learn each other's culture, having fun there, and this is the first time in US here, and we are meeting the Nobel laureates, and I think that this is the most exciting part of my life.
The biggest issue at hand for those individuals who want to make a difference is the fact that they don't know exactly how to stand up. They don't know what they need to do to start it. And so I really want to hear how they started so I can get inspiration as to how we can start it.
Moral courage is the rarest form of valor in the adult world, and yet it is the one that you as students are called upon to muster every single day.
And coming here is so important because it helps me, especially all my classmates, for us to be able to learn more about what we can do to affect change.
If each and every one of us selected the issue that they most cared about and volunteered a few hours a month, imagine what this world would be.
Just as a whole, the whole speak truth to power thing has changed how I think a lot. It's made me a lot more grateful for what's in my life, and it's given me insight on just how to, in small ways, better the world around me.
Speak up. Speak out for freedom and rights. Speak truth to power.
I think that it's definitely inspired me to take action as a whole, as an individual, and learn more about the world around me and find injustices that I can right in my own community.
You know, you can come from such a small town and you can make such a huge difference. You don't have to be born into like a huge family, like a rich family. You don't have to be born into like from New York City. You can come from such a little town and you can really make a difference in the world. It takes one person to make a difference in the world.
Peace can only be achieved if you get people involved in that which stands in the way of peace, to talk to each other.
I'm so inspired at what they do, what a people can do. If you have a strong willingness, you can do everything. That's what I think I learned from them. Thank you.
We come to the end of the 12th World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates. Speak up, speak out for freedom and rights. These 3 days have spanned 6 absolutely fascinating laureate panels, an opening day luncheon with a hard-hitting keynote by President Carter, 2 beautiful dinners, one offering true words of wisdom about the power of reconciliation delivered by President Clinton, and the second that celebrated the mosaic of Chicago's young artists themselves using song and poetry to speak up and speak out. At yesterday's luncheon, Chicago Public School Superintendent Jean-Claude Brizard made the compelling case for the vital role that education can play in advancing peace, human rights, and social justice. And just this afternoon, we witnessed the well-deserved presentation of the Peace Summit Award for the incredible and heroic efforts of Sean Penn. Congratulations again. The Permanent Secretariat has honored the City of Chicago by awarding the summit to Chicago, and we have many to thank for its success. First, we can never adequately thank the Nobel Peace Laureates who have given so graciously of their time and their wisdom this week. You are an inspiration to us all. We have heard your words in today's declaration, where you stand together as a beacon of light penetrating the dark corners of the globe. That's a good thing. I must thank Mayor Emanuel because it was his commitment that this summit go forward and that Chicago hosts the 12th World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates. He has proven to be a dynamic and engaging co-chairman. Thank you to Kerry Kennedy and the Robert F. Kennedy Center for blazing a trail of youth engagement and providing the curriculum of Speak Truth to Power that turns ideals into action. Thanks to Bob Gallucci and Julie Stash of the MacArthur Foundation for your continuing leadership on these issues that matter to all of humanity. And thanks to David Hiller and the McCormick Foundation for always being there for Chicago. Thank you to Michael Sachs and World Business Chicago for your civic leadership and raising the funds that allowed us to stage this historic summit in a manner worthy of the ideals and the idealists that the summit brings together. Thank you, Chris Kennedy, for having the vision of what this summit could be and helping us to achieve it. In any event of this magnitude, there are always a few individuals who are truly responsible for the successes that we have enjoyed, and I want to single out a few of them by name, beginning with the remarkable Cheryl Hughes from the Chicago Community Trust, Jenny Sisner and Andrew Spinelli from the Mayor's Office, and Sally Armbruster from World Business Chicago. I am especially thankful for the myriad contributions of my remarkable colleagues at the Chicago Community Trust who have poured out their hearts and souls into this endeavor. And finally, we have benefited from the wise counsel and great talent of Rick Jaskolka and the entire team from Jaskolka Terman. There are so many others that I could thank, but it's too much time to take at this point, so I want to comment instead on what distinguishes this summit is its commitment to young people, a principle baked into the very design of this summit. Several thousand young people have participated over the 3 days in our audience, plus tens of thousands watching via live stream or following the proceedings on the Scholastic or State Department special summit websites. We have also hosted 16 students who were brought here to the summit by the State Department from Liberia, East Timor, Bangladesh, and Yemen, and the 180 students brought here by Peace Jam. And we know they're in the house. Young people this week have been informed, engaged, and energized and invited to the world stage. And as you just heard, Professor Yunus announced a few moments ago, the laureates are asking young people of the world to accept the torch of responsibility for making this a better, more just, more humane, more peaceful world. For me, this summit frames a defining moment calling upon the world's youth to lead. So I think it's appropriate that I'm able to close with the words of Robert F. Kennedy, delivered in March of 1968, that ring true today, to quote, "Too much, too long, we seem to have surrendered community excellence and community values in the mere accumulation of material things. Our gross national product counts air pollution, cigarette advertising, and the ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. It counts special locks for our doors and the jails for those who break them. It counts the destruction of our redwoods and the loss of our natural wonder in chaotic sprawl. It counts napalm and the costs of a nuclear warhead and the armored cars for police who fight riots in our streets. It counts the television programs which glorify violence in order to sell toys to our children. Yet, the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry, or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. Thank you all for attending some or all of these extraordinary events, and may you take inspiration from these events and go forth on the wings of peace. The 12th World Summit of the Nobel Peace Laureates is now closed.
For, by the way, as we all know, but it has to be said, if leading people in the streets and being attacked by dogs and jailed for your beliefs is being a wimp, I want to be a Martin Luther King Jr. wimp. I can't be a Dalai Lama wimp because he's a monk and I'm a girl. But I want to end, right? I want to end this comment just pointing out that the flip side to me of really pushing forward with nonviolent action to change this world is really demilitarization and thinking of it as a positive thing. When Sean, not you Sean, the real Sean, when the real Sean mentioned how lobbyists can tie up the common good, I can only think of the military-industrial complex, and that is not a tree-hugging, wimpy liberal phrase. It came from Dwight David Eisenhower in 1954. He is the one who coined the phrase of the military-industrial complex and told us to beware. The defense industry was brilliant in its conception in putting parts of the process of building weapons in almost every congressional district in the United States of America, making it extremely difficult to take that industry on because you got every congressman, every senator who's going to be fighting under the guise of, defense. And I really wish we would rename it the War Department because it is what it is.
That seems to suggest that nonviolence as a tool or a technique for social or political or economic change is sufficiently difficult to consider throwing in the towel, to at least consider that this is too hard, much too hard. And perhaps finally, to reach the conclusion, as many in our world have already done, that nonviolence simply does not work. Is that your view, Professor Williams?
Please call me Jody, okay? Right. I get confused with the professor.
Okay, and you can call me Sean. Right.
Well, Sean, okay. I've been pondering a lot over the last few years the wimpification of peace. And it makes me really angry in a peaceful sort of way to think about that. I believe that we really have to strive for demilitarization, which we should stop thinking is a dirty word. We need to recognize that nonviolence is not inaction. Nonviolent action, I believe, is among the most courageous acts that a person can possibly contemplate, stand up, and carry out. I believe that constructing sustainable peace with justice and equality and an end to impunity is not for wimps or the weak of heart. Whenever I talk about it, I give the examples of Sister Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. Through her courageous stance on democracy, through nonviolence, look at what is being accomplished in our country. If that's wimpy nonviolence, that's the kind of wimp I want to be. I think about Martin Luther King Jr. and what he did to help bring about equality in this country, which we are still struggling. And jobs. Jobs. I wish that we all wanted to live in a country that provided dignified work that did not include building weapons to attack other countries. It's making me MAD. So I'm going to think about how I'm going to, there are a lot of organizations out there that want to make demilitarization a realistic companion to nonviolence. And I challenge the young people to think about that one. Because you have to get rid of weapons. You have to really challenge the belief that having a lot of weapons makes you safe in order to really bring sustainable peace to this planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody clearly is a girl, but she tells me she is not the mother of Ted Williams or Robin Williams. I recall a story that John Williams, my old friend John Lewis, once told me. John Lewis, as you know, marched for much of his life with Martin King and was beaten badly at the Selma Bridge. And I said to him, after that, John, and became a congressman from Atlanta, distinguished. I asked him, after that, John, after they opened up a big slice of your head, why did you continue to subscribe to Dr. King's concept of nonviolence? And John Lewis said, because Dr. King would have found a gun and shot me if I hadn't. President Gorbachev, can you tell me or tell us
can be added to yours, and together we will be able to take our world one step forward in the fight for freedom and rights.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our final panel, World Peace and Nonviolence, Never Give Up, moderated by author and journalist Jim Wooten.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Dancing with the Peacemakers. My name is Jim Wooten. I point that out because I've been often mistaken this week for Sean Penn, and I hate it when that happens. This is an auspicious occasion this entire week, and I can't tell you how pleased and honored and fortunate I am to be here and to be the only person on this stage who has not won a Nobel Peace Prize. And I say I'm fortunate because I don't have to put up with always being described as an eminently decent person, as a courageous humanitarian, and as someone who has helped to make great changes in the world. No one has ever described me as that. These people have to live with those descriptions every day of their lives, and will no doubt have to endure them for the remainder of their lives, because, in fact, that is what they are. Eminently decent human beings. And courageous humanitarians and people who have made the world a better place, or at least given the world a chance to be a better place. Now, to our theme and topic this afternoon, which is nonviolence, never give up. The construction of that, the very language of
It is too often that I have to say, I'm so sorry I cannot be with you on this day. Again, I'm saying the same thing that I've said so many times before to different gatherings all over the world. I'm so sorry I cannot be here with you today. But of course, my thoughts are with you, my spirit is with you, and I perfectly agree with you that we must speak up and speak out for freedom and human rights. We have been doing that in Burma for over 20 years, and people are now beginning to see that these 20 years have not been in vain. It is important that people speak up and speak out. When I went on a tour of the country back in 2002 to 2003, people asked me what they could do. I knew then that our people had been badly intimidated by the military regime, and so I would say to them, you must start by refusing to say something is good if it is not good, or saying something is just if it is not just. You start that way, then gradually go on to say that this is unjust, this is bad, and then you go on to follow up your words with appropriate action. So speaking up and speaking out is an important step in our fight for freedom and human rights. People have to have the courage to stand up and say, this we will not tolerate, this we will not accept, this is not what is right for humanity. By finding the strength to speak up, we strengthen others. I believe that the National League for Democracy has helped to keep alight hope in the hearts of the people of Burma by speaking out for freedom and for human rights. I wish very much that we could pool all these voices speaking up for human rights and freedom and make the sound of freedom and rights. I would like all the voices speaking up for freedom and rights to be combined so that nobody anywhere in the world can be deaf to the sound of that call. I hope that our voices here in Burma